Hello and welcome back to Justin Talks Villa for a very, very, very special occasion. My first online interview, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to get on for my very first one. Luis Miguel Echegaray from New York City live.
Beautiful. You said my name beautifully, and I got to tell you something else, Justin. That's the best intro, that video footage I've ever seen from any YouTube show. It's tremendous. Tremendous work, my friend.
I can't take credit for that. My very good friend who is a movie director and producer, I asked him if he knew anybody that could maybe cobble something together. And when it came through, I've got to say, I was absolutely blown away. And I thought, wow.
The only thing that it's needed is your face. Just
it doesn't need that. It definitely doesn't need that.
No,
you don't want to ruin it.
Your face on Jack Grealish's body when he scored the winner against Birmingham City back in the championship.
Right, I'll get the AI on that then. That'd be fantastic. If you're new around here, drop me a subscribe, drop the video a like, and get involved in the comment section as well. Yes, so unfortunately, Lewis wouldn't come over from New York and sit next to me in a room. It's absolutely disgraceful, and the budget for the podcast just wouldn't run to the flights and accommodation. So
I was actually disgusted by the fact that you wouldn't pay me first class to go all the way there. So
I'm so sorry, mate. Maybe in about 15 years' time, we might be able to push to something like that. So the main reason we're getting you, well, there's loads of reasons I'm getting you on today. I've known you for a while now. And I'm going to out you now, Lewis. I haven't told you this before we come on, because I have had a bit of stick over the last few years, the amount of visits I make to the club shop. And now I can reveal one of the main reasons I make all the visits to the club shop is this man here.
That's right.
I'm his kit. I don't know what you want to call me, really.
You're I guess you're my personal supplier, I guess. Anytime a Villa kit is revealed, because obviously I'm in New York City, and I think the club are doing a much better job at selling merchandise internationally, but obviously being in NYC, it's harder for me to get to Brum and go to the store, although there's a beautiful one now, the Bull Ring, so that's good.
Yeah.
It'll be closer, but this is the man I go to every single time. Justin, can you get me this shirt? But I do pay you straight away, right? This isn't some gift.
Absolutely. No. It's a transactional.
Fully
job, yes.
Appreciate it, Justin. I fully appreciate it.
No, I know. I would. I'd do it all the time for you, my friend.
Including this shirt, the one that I'm wearing right now.
It was that one. Yeah. I'm surprised you haven't messaged me about this one yet.
Well, Justin, you got to get me that one now. Sorry, bud.
Okay, right. It's just an online one straight away. A request.
Yeah.
So we're going to chat about your early life, because you've got a fascinating story about how you became a Villa fan. Then we'll move on to getting into your ESPN work and your media work, which is fantastic, and your new book that you have written with the greatest player ever to have graced the football pitch. Look at him there. He's ready. He's a consummate professional there, one at hand, ready to show. I've got a picture to throw up as well, so I bet he's got a book somewhere. And then we'll have a bit of a chat about Villa this season, and moving on finally to talk about the big game at the weekend, and we'll get Lewis's thoughts on that. So we'll start with early life, Lewis, and you've been very kind enough to furnish me with some pictures. So we'll start with this one. This is yourself and your father, I do believe, in Machu Picchu, if that's correct.
That is correct.
Peru, where you was born. So a bit about your early life then. What's it like growing up in Peru?
Yeah. This is one of my favorite photographs. My late father passed away sadly in 2009 when I was in my 20s. But this is a great memory I hold dear. When you are Peruvian growing up in the 80s, going to Cusco and Machu Picchu, it was a different experience to now. Obviously, it's overpopulated with tourism and stuff like that, naturally so, being one of the wonders of the world. But back then, Justin, it was, you can see, it was like you could go pretty much anywhere. It was almost empty. And Peruvians kind of take a trip to Cusco like 2-3 times a year. So this was just an annual trip that we would take with my family. I think this was before my younger sister was born. So obviously I was more of a center of attention until she came along. But it was one of those amazing trips. My dad just happens to be the main reason why, I'm a football fan. I'm sure I'm not the only one. in that storyline. You know, the one that introduced me to the game, et cetera, et cetera. So it was amazing times. And this is a photo I hold dear to my heart for sure.
Yeah, well, it was a beautiful picture. When you sent it through, I thought that must be absolutely stunning to look back on memories like that. And it's a beautiful place, isn't it? A beautiful part of the world. It's somewhere I definitely have got on my list of places to visit. A stunning, like you say, one of the wonders of the world. So in the early days then, you said about, you alluded to your dad with the football. Who was he following in those days? What kind of teams would he have been?
Well, every Peruvian, whether they like it or not, have to support the national team, of course.
Yes.
You know, it's and for our English viewers and European ones, really, they have to realize that in South America, to support the national team is very different to when you support, you know, a successful team, like, you know. And I know that, you know, England fans will not call their team successful, but in the scope of things, in the context of things throughout the world, they are, right? They never have to rethink about getting to the World Cup. They're always going to make it. They get to finals, you know, the plethora of talent. When you're Peruvian, it's a little bit different, right? The World Cup in Russia in 2018, when Peru made it, that was the first time in 36 years since Peru had made it. So, you know, but back in the 70s, Peru was an absolute giant. So anyway, to answer your question, the Peruvian national team is one, and then there's major clubs in Peru like Sporting Cristal, which when I was growing up were just they were okay. They weren't amazing, but they were okay. Now they're much bigger. But the main two clubs back then, and the main rivalry was Universitario, La U, which is in Lima, and Alianza Lima, which is where, you know, Nene Cubillas, arguably the greatest Peruvian player that's ever lived, came from as well. So that was my dad's team, Alianza Lima, and that was the first game I ever saw. Like, he took me to that stadium, and that was like the first experience. So those were the clubs and the time then. It was incredible to think back, you know, when you go back to the 80s and stuff, and reminisce on such amazing memories. But those were the clubs, and the national team, as I said, whether any Peruvian likes it or not, they have to support it.
So would you say in Peru then it was national team over club team? I know in England there's a lot of debate over club or country, but it seems to be, from what you're saying, that country gazumps the clubs, and it's, you know, the country comes together for the national team.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. I mean, obviously everybody saves spaces in their heart for the club over country, and I think you're right. I think in England overall, you know, being a Villa fan or being a fan of a supporter of your own club, in many ways, you have much more of a deeper connection with the club that you do with the national team, partly because of what I was saying. You kind of take the success of the national team for granted, right? Like,
yeah,
you never have to worry about qualifying for the World Cup. There's no such thing as a struggle. Definitely not a financial one. Definitely not in terms of talent. You're always going to have talent if you're England, Germany, France, Spain, whatever. In South America and in other parts of the world, well, that's not the case unless you're Argentina or Brazil, right? That becomes you know, much more precious. So I would say that in Peru, like, to, you know, when the national team plays, especially in big games, yeah, it's a very, very big deal. So, you know, when Peru made it to the World Cup, in the aforementioned 2018 World Cup, it was incredible. Like, you know, the emotions that every Peruvian went through is amazing. So I would say that, yeah, the national team just carries that much weight, especially when they're doing well, which doesn't happen often, but
and the South Americans are renowned for their flamboyance and their extravagance in supporting their clubs, and the kit as well. It's a very iconic kit, isn't it? The Peru kit.
I mean, listen, I'm being biased, but I think it's the greatest kit ever. It's especially the one in the 70s when Peru was a real deal. The 1970 World Cup, that Peruvian team, you know, when Brazil won it in perfect fashion, right, with Pelé, they played Peru in the knockout stages, and it was a tremendous match. And that iconic kit, because it represents the flag. It's, you know, white and red, and I don't think there's a better kit out there, to be honest with you.
I think we should do a swap now. So I'll send you the next Villa kit, and you can send me a Peru kit.
Done. Both represented by Adidas, so we're good.
Oh, there you go. Then that's easy. Then we're supporting the bigger cause in all aspects. So everybody listening is going to be thinking now, okay, young lad, grew up in Peru. How on earth did he become a passionate staunch, vocal football Aston Villa fan.
I know.
And this is where the story emigrates, shall we say, to England.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a story I hold dear to my heart. If those who follow me obviously know it. But to your point, sometimes it becomes really incredible for people to remember that how is this man a massive Villa fan? and the reason, as you mentioned, is really is my Aston Villa story is the story of my life. You know, like you said, I'm Peruvian, grew up in Peru. And Peru at that time in the early 80s was going through major social, economical, and political issues. So, you know, during the early 90s, you know, when I was now 11 years old, 12 years old, Peru was going through major turmoil. And my parents said, we're moving to England. And I said, okay, why? Because I knew that I had aunts there. I have two aunts, my father's sisters. They moved to England in the 70s. They married English men. And so I had cousins, and I knew that my parents had visited them way back in the day, and they would come and visit Peru. But I'd never gone to England. I never knew anything about it. 11, 12 years old, we're moving to England. And I said, what? Okay. I take it just a new life, whatever. So yeah. Oh, and also you were born there. And I was like, what? I had no idea. I was born in England, and it was because of a trip that my parents took way back. And my mom found out she was pregnant in England at the time. And my dad was working there at the time. So they just stayed there a little bit longer. I was born. And then shortly after 6 months, 5 months, I came back to Peru. But they never told me. That's why and I was like, oh, so that's why everybody's passport is a different color to mine. I had no idea. So that was another thing. They knew that I had another connection because I was born in England, the only one. Everybody's Peruvian. Everybody born in Peru. I grew up Peru. I thought I was the same, but no, you were born in England. So I'm like a real life Paddington Bear, where I left Peru.
I wasn't going to bring the Paddington thing up, but you know.
No, it's my way to help people understand the context of it. And I do love strawberry marmalade sandwiches. So, but we moved then. This was the year that I moved to England, immigrated to England from Peru, and began my new life in England. Was the year that preceded the birth of the Premier League.
Right, and good timing.
Exactly. So I moved there, and Justin, obviously, you know, many people will not realize this, but many do realize this. Is when you immigrate to another country, and you're a child, it's a massive cultural shock.
Yes.
It's just and Peru and England in the early 90s could not have been more different. No, so I literally land in England, and the weather's totally different. The food is totally different. The people are different. And I have a very difficult time trying to adjust. I go to a state school nearby. Try and make friends is difficult, until one day I make friends with this one kid called Mark. And he picked me to play five-a-side on, during break time in school or whatever. And he's like, come on, we're going to be Villa. And I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. And he told me, he was an Aston Villa fan. We became friends. He would take me to his house. And then I opened the room, and it's just adorned with Villa, Dalian Atkinson on the wall, Saunders, all these heroes, Paul McGrath. And I'm just I fall in love, immediately. I'm I fall in love with this. And Villa becomes my very first sort of connector to England. It becomes the first thing that welcomes me to England. So his family, we go to Villa Park, and so I begin to have this massive connection. And from that moment, that's when Villa chose me, so to speak. And that's where that growth and love and supporting Villa became my safety net, the one that allowed me to be more connected to the UK. And that never stopped. And so through the years, as I assimilated to English culture, it was thanks also to Villa. And from that moment, I was just obsessed. So I would tell my parents, please, can I go with Mark to Birmingham? Because we were in Surrey and London. We weren't in Birmingham. So I would have to take the train and all that stuff. And my parents were like, what? What's Aston Villa, first of all? So from that moment, it just became this journey of me being a Villa fan. Yeah, that's 2002. I'm at uni, and this is I go with my friend who's an Arsenal fan because we're playing Arsenal, and this is the infamous freaking game where Robert Pires scores that ridiculous goal over Peter Schmeichel. And my friend who's an Arsenal fan is with us at the whole end, and he's standing up clapping, and I grab him like to sit him down because he was about to get the shit out of him. But yeah, that's. Unfortunately, I wanted to send you more photos, but because when I moved to NYC from England, I didn't. I ran out of pics because they're all back in England. But this is one I hold dear to my heart.
Yeah, it's a lovely picture.
Yeah,
it's a really nice picture, and yeah, like you say, it must have been an incredible. Cause obviously, as we know, people coming into different countries, it can be an extremely difficult thing to get used to and to assimilate to a new country. You know, and you were sort of thrown in the deep end a little bit and going to state school in would have been the 80s, yeah. So
no, this was early 90s. I moved to England.
Oh, okay.
So like, yeah, 90, 92, something like that. Yeah, whatever the year was before the birth of the Premier League.
92, 93, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very amazing story. How you become, like you say, you don't choose Villa chooses you, and it certainly 100%. Did. So from that day onwards, then the passion was there, wasn't it? And you just grew and grew with the love of Villa, and obviously then you moved back then, but you moved to America, and you went on a different pathway, didn't you? At that point?
Yeah, two-time immigrant. Yeah, but I mean, but then I grew up in England, right? I went to school.
Yeah.
I went to university there. So England for me is, so I'm Peruvian, but I also feel very much English as well because I grew up. My youth is England, right? I moved when I was 12, 11, something like that, and I grew up there all the way until I was 23. I still have my family there. Like my sister lives there. I have my cousins who are half English. They grew up there. Like, so England is very much, my best friends growing up. So I grew up during all that time, right? Euro 96, Beckham's red card, all these moments, to me are quintessentially part of who I am as well. So I went to uni in London and then to study film, TV, and theater, and because acting and movies and stuff is actually my first passion. And then after university, I moved to New York City in 2003. So more than 20 years ago to go to acting school. So yeah, it's been kind of a ride. But yeah, I moved to New York in 2003 and began my new life in the States.
So it was an acting career you was pursuing at that point then?
Yeah, I wanted to be an actor, and I moved to acting school, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. It was an amazing time of my life. And then after acting school, I lived the acting life, like, waiter by day, off Broadway by night. I moved to LA as well because, that's where the TV and film was. So I went LA, New York, and I've done everything and anything from, work in a bakery to a moving company just to keep up with my passion for being an actor. And that was all in my 20s and then in my early 30s. And then when I married, that's when my wife said, all right, this acting life
time to grow up.
Yeah, this acting life is a little crazy. I was successful in many ways, but I was also, the acting life is like this, right? It's just like, and my wife was a elementary school teacher, like didn't understand that world, and I didn't want her to. And so she realized, like, you love football, you love sports, but you love storytelling because I love writing. Why don't we go back to school and try and get a master's in journalism? And that's what I did. And that was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. I went back to school, and that's where I changed my life 180 to become a sports writer, presenter, analyst. And yeah, that's where the story started.
Thank God you married her.
I say that every day. And you've met her. I say that every day.
She is a fantastic woman. And
I say that every day.
She's absolutely lovely.
Oh, without her, none of this happens. None of it.
You know what they say, behind every great man is a fantastic woman.
Yeah.
And that's definitely in your case and mine, probably.
So
yes. So the ESPN stuff, that's really, really interesting, your work there. So how does that work? What do you do, and how did that come about?
Yeah.
We obviously know ESPN as a sports broadcaster in this country, but a lot of people that are watching won't be sort of aware that.
Yeah. So in the UK, obviously,
stuff,
you have. Yeah. So in the UK, obviously, you have Sky Sports and BBC and ITV and TNT, and even though, as you mentioned, ESPN is known, it's not as big, but in the US, it is massive, right? And so I've been here now 3 years. Before that, I was at CBS Sports, which is another massive network here in the US. Before that, I was with Sports Illustrated, arguably the biggest, most historic sports magazine in the United States as well. And before that, I was with The Guardian, actually. That's where I really started everything. But yes, ESPN 3 years. And I'm kind of like a Swiss Army knife here, Justin. I do, because a lot of my content is also, a lot of the work that I do is also in Spanish, but we have a sports center here in America, which is the equivalent of Sky Sports News. So I do that. I write articles. My Premier League end of season awards came out yesterday. I write articles. We do a lot of content like this, go on StreamYard, and we do YouTube, ESPN YouTube, where we recap matches, preview matches. But I also do a lot of Spanish-based content specifically for the Premier League and English teams in the Champions League. So Spanish, English, TV, writing, presenting. I'm never been a person that's like happy just doing one thing. I think I will just go insane if I do that. I need to do different stuff. My mind is just geared like that. And so my work kind of like mirrors that, I think. And yeah, it's a great place to work in, and I love the work that I do, regardless of where it is. But obviously, allows me to talk about the Premier League, Villa, and things in Spanish, and that's an important part of the work that I like to do too.
Yeah.
To report and analyze and give videos and content on the Premier League in Spanish, because especially a club like Villa, the fan base in Spanish is growing and growing and growing. So it's good for me to try and represent that. So
if I need someone that can help me with the language barrier, if I ever get to speak to one of the players, I'll be calling you. That's for sure.
You call me straight away.
Be my interpreter. And you have met a certain manager as well of Aston Villa, haven't you?
Oh, there he is.
And interviewed him as well.
The king, El Rey, Mr. Unai Emery. Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah. I have good relationships with the club, and Damian Vidagani is a great human being, a really good gentleman. And
do you know what, Lewis? Sorry to interrupt you. I met him for the first time.
Great guy, right?
Wednesday night at the awards, and we do talk a little bit on DMs. And what an incredible human being he is. His speech was unbelievable. He gets Villa, he gets football, and he delivers it in such a great way. Yeah.
He's just an amazing person. I mean, and his history all the way from Valencia, and the things that he has done in his career echo what you just said, which is like he just gets it. He understands what a club means to the community. Like, it's very important, and not many people who are in the industry get that, and he gets it. And Unai Emery gets it. That's why he went. So essentially, I know that I'm not patronizing him when I say that Damian Vidagani was his right-hand man, because he really facilitates a lot of what Emery does. Obviously, he has a much bigger role, but that's how important he is to the club. So anyway, through him, obviously, got to know Unai Emery. I did an interview with him his first season, and we had a great chat. And we did it in Spanish because, and I did the translation in an article, but it's very important to me that he speaks in Spanish, because as much as we love him in English, I want Villa fans to understand that he can express himself even much more in Spanish, and he's
absolutely.
And there is so much that he offers, and I think that's a lesson to many Premier League journalists. I think and networks put the effort to put in bilingual reporters, because you will get so much more out of a person. And so anyway, so this was after the interview. We already knew each other. So obviously I'm a journalist and stuff, and I'm neutral and objective, and I have to be professional. But I do believe, though, that there is a place in the world where a journalist should also show his love for a club, because it shows the humanity in them, and it actually understands the impact. In fact, I think you're being a liar if you don't show that part, because you do have an affinity towards either a nation or a club. There's no shame in doing that, as long as you do it from an objective point. So Unai Emery, to me, is that. Like, I've interviewed him as a manager, and I have criticized him when I've thought like things have not gone the right way, but he has always been a great human being, respectful, really good communicator. And so that particular meeting with him was when the Villa came for the Premier League Summer Series in the United States. And, and that's where, Monchi also know well as well. So, it's just a good trio of people, and Unai Emery above and beyond. It's just such an incredible professional and a great person.
So they are heading back over to the States this year. Is it something you're going to try and replicate, maybe? Try and catch up with them somewhere along the line?
And they're playing MLS teams, and I'm very close with MLS, and that it would be wonderful. But annoyingly, I'm actually going to be over your side of the woods. Because, but it's okay. I think my wife needs a break, because when I was in the UK last year, we went to Villa Park, and we went to a bunch of places more times than she actually wanted to. This is a girl from Connecticut who had
She's
no idea. She's a
Villa fan now, though, Luis. We know.
Who had no idea she was going to marry a Peruvian and B one that was a Villa fan.
Yeah, but she's as much a Villa fan as you are now.
Oh yeah,
big time. She's a big Villa fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have been over a few times. Here's another picture you sent me.
Oh, good old
fantastic
Tails.
Ian Taylor. Yes.
When was this? Legend. Yeah. This was a while ago, 2018 maybe, before COVID for sure. Ian Taylor, obviously a Villa ambassador, and every Villa fan holds Ian Taylor dear to their heart. He's one of our greatest players, and just a great human being as well.
Yeah, he's a top guy. So we'll go on to another aspect of your work, as you've alluded to already, with your you can't sit still, have you? So this is, like we've said it already, but this book that has come out, which I haven't had a copy of yet, so I'll have to get myself.
Oh my God, that's true.
I know, yeah.
Oh no, yeah. I'll get my publisher to send you one straight away.
You know what I mean? Not that I was trying to hint or anything.
No, you should. You know what? That is absolutely my bad. You're getting one straight away.
It's fine.
Straight away, Justin.
But this interests me more than anything you've ever done, because this man is I don't mind saying it, the greatest footballer to ever kick a ball in history.
There's nothing to
history.
Yeah, he is. Listen,
go on.
Go ahead.
And you, not only have you written a book about him, but you was in a room with him.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I mean, my wedding, and then that day when I met him.
Watch it. Where are we going with that one?
I know. She won't mind. Yeah, this was an incredible moment. I mean, the greatest moment of my professional career was when I did this. And I'm very honored. And I'm not. I think it's, it would be. I worked very hard in my career to make this happen. So it's not like I'm saying. I hate it when people say blessed and all that, because it's like, you're not blessed. Like if something good happens to you, obviously fortune comes into it, but it's also because you put work. And this was a day that to me mattered a lot. And yeah, it was an amazing time. So yeah. It was. This was the summer when he arrived, and this is the eve of him playing in the League's Cup final against Nashville, the team that Villa actually is going to be playing this summer. And yeah, we had a great chat about his arrival to Miami, his time in PSG, obviously his thoughts about him coming to America. Just an amazing time. Yeah, and the book, thank you so much for helping me promote it, is about his arrival to the United States and the impact that it's had, specifically that summer, and what it will mean, and also at the same time his story as a whole. But really overall, because it's for everybody, but I've written it for young people, because I want them to understand that his story, that's actually not said too many times, is really inspirational, and I connect to it a lot, because just like I was telling you about my immigrant story from Peru to England.
Yeah,
he left Argentina when he was 13 years old to Spain along with his dad. He's an introvert, very quiet, and that also culturally shocked him. And he had to play growing up in Barcelona. His family had to go back to Argentina. So there's an immigrant component to this that people forget. Like it's a really, and throughout it all, completely overlooked in those early days because of his growth hormone situation.
Yeah.
Growing up in Argentina, like his parents had to cough up like $1,000 a month just for the injections. That's why he went to Barcelona, because he needed help. His family needed help. And here was a tremendous talent that just needed an opportunity. He went to Boca Juniors. They said no. River Plate also no. There were clubs like Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid were even looking, but nobody was willing to just like, and Barcelona, thanks to a push, made it happen. So, so it's all this. It's a book about how I think he's such an underdog story, probably the most underdog story out there in sports. And he's an inspiration to young people in the way that no matter what happens, just keep going, keep going, keep going. So I wanted to write a book about that. And the book also has moments where I talk about, the lessons that you can learn from his career, how like Ronaldinho became a very important part of his life when he first came to Barcelona, or how he's, in my opinion, the top 5 free kick takers in the world in the history of the game. And so I do a chapter about like how he does it. So I wanted to do a book that really just like helped and inspire young people to understand like how, an athlete can tell you many things about his story and it can be inspirational. None of us are ever going to be Messi, but what we can learn from his story can maybe be helpful, especially to young people.
100%. I think it's a fantastic angle to come at the story at, because there's so many Messi books out there, isn't there, because of who he is and what he's done. But I think now he is coming towards the end of his career. We've got the next generation of young kids that aren't going to know him like we know him. We've grown up with him, we've watched him, and I love Villa more than anything in the world. But some of my best memories watching football, mainly on the television. I never, unfortunately, got over to Barcelona to watch him. He's just sitting watching that team playing him play. It just mesmerised me, and it has to be someone that is remembered forever, really. And yes, it's easier these days with the advent of so much social media and television. All the games are covered now, so we're never going to not be able to watch him. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic book, and I'll look forward to reading it, Lewis. How's that?
Well, my friend, I'm on the phone to my publisher right now.
Yeah, we'll go that. So yeah, fantastic. So we'll lean in a little bit then to this season, and we'll just put this one there because I really enjoyed
that
this
was the
picture.
Bayern Munich trip. That's one where wife and I from New York City, 24 hours, get to Villa, and just experience one of the greatest.
Had to be there.
I mean, that was just an unbelievable evening. Unbelievable. It's just ridiculous.
So how are you feeling about the whole season now? We're coming towards the end of it now. We'll come on to the Manchester United game in a little bit. We'll do a little bit of a preview of that. But, let's have a bit of an overall chat about the season and how you felt it's gone. Obviously, coming into it, first Champions League campaign for 40-odd years. We did have the obviously European season last year, which I do believe helped massively going into this one. And then the upheaval of losing Douglas Luiz. And, I know there's a lot to talk about, but, give me your overall thoughts on how the season has gone.
Listen, I think whenever we have to answer this question, we have to really remember the context here. And understand that Unai Emery has been here less than 3 years. He arrived in November, late October of 2022. Okay, less than 3 years, and at that time,
you have to laugh though, don't you?
Yes.
I know you've laughed, but you have to laugh.
It's unbelievable. And at that moment, we were trying to stay in the Premier League because of the rut that we had gone through. With Steven Gerrard, I'm not saying it's all his fault, but obviously he was the manager and he did. Take us to a point where once again we were like 16th, 17th. In comes Unai Emery, completely criticized by others, because they just kept going back to his resume with Arsenal and forgetting about so many other contexts. So anyway, to answer your question, in less than 3 years, look where the club is. This season, right? You mentioned last season, obviously achieving Champions League football. And then this season, playing in the Champions League for the first time in Premier League era, and for the first time in 40 years in the highest of European competition. So Villa have to navigate that. You mentioned the losses of players, because now we're not just talking about a club that has to navigate Champions League football, domestic football, but in the age and day of PSR, which is also a really important part. And Villa's not the only club that's doing it, obviously, but Villa was the only club that was just experiencing Champions League football for the first time ever in the Premier League, and dealing with economic things that they had to go. And at the same time, trying, navigate qualifying once again for the Champions League and domestic competition. So overall, when you look at the specter of things, the fact that the FA Cup semi-final was a disappointment, no doubt, but to make it that far was incredible. To beat PSG in the second leg and to nearly getting to it is Luis Enrique said that no team had done to them what Villa had just done to them that day. So there's so much to celebrate, I think, because it's very difficult to navigate so much football. These players have played so much to do that. And just the fact that in the final day of the season, we can still hopefully maybe get Champions League football again, but we have already guaranteed European football, which is a very important thing. It's unbelievable. So overall, I think it's a really, really good season that we should be happy about. If we don't get Champions League football, it's obviously going to be disappointing. We still haven't won a trophy since 1996, a major trophy. So that's something that we have to look at. But you have to look at the context of the overall journey. So I would give it an A- this season so far. If we win Champions League football, it's an A. It's unbelievable. Once again, we have done it.
I can't disagree with you. I think you've nailed it, as you always do, on the head. I think to balance off everything we've had to do this season and go through to pretty late on in 3 competitions, and do what we've done in all of those. I know people will point towards that Paris game as the big disappointment because it was such an opportunity to win a trophy. But to me, it doesn't take away the enormity of what this club continues to do, and ultimately probably still overachieving when you look at the financial side of stuff, which we don't like talking about, but like you've alluded to, you have to talk about it. It unfortunately drives everything behind the scenes.
You have to.
Football is a business now. We hate that word, but it is, and the work that they do off the pitch, and we've said about Damien and Monchi, and they work tirelessly to make sure that we are at every point compliant with all of these rules and regulations, whilst trying to balance and put a team on the pitch that can compete into the latter stages of these competitions and try and win things. So it is a quite monumental feat that they have all done, and we have to give credit, obviously, to the owners, because their foresight and their money and their drive and determination to drive this club from every aspect is just unbelievable. So yes, so this is how the season looks. We'll take off that so we can see. This is where we are now with 1 game to go. So your thoughts on where we are currently?
Well, I mean, I think we've done a really good job at staying in the fight, because I think we could have easily, dropped a few points, specifically the game against Bournemouth, very difficult to go there and then with 10 men at the end of the game after Jacob Ramsey's ridiculous sending off, by the way. But anyway, that's for another day. But so to pick up points is massive. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that Unai Emery and this team have achieved records at home. Villa Park is an absolute fortress. It's unbelievable. Not since losing to Arsenal at the beginning of the season.
And we shouldn't have lost that game either.
No, exactly. Since that day that we shouldn't have lost it, but we did, Villa Park has been an absolute fortress in every competition, which is remarkable. I mean, it's just a really, really amazing achievement. So anyway, looking at this table, I think Villa have done everything they can to be in the fight. Obviously, we can look about the context of some points that we dropped specifically towards the end of 2024, which is it is what it is. But to be in this position to fight it is amazing. So I think that Newcastle are fine, because they're at home to Everton. So they're going to get
fixtures while you're talking.
Yeah, so Newcastle are fine right there. So when you look at Newcastle and Everton, I think it's fine. 69 points was was my marker to stay in to get Champions League football. They'll get that with that win. I don't think it'll be easy, but they'll get it done. City, Fulham, I'm intrigued, but their
it's
win
an interesting one, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, their win against Bournemouth has done. If you go back to the table, their win against Bournemouth did almost enough for them. So 68 should also be okay, but losing to Fulham at home, who, by the way, Fulham are fighting for European football. I don't think it's going to be that easy, but City should also be okay. But look for that game against Fulham. I look for that one. So now comes, aside from our game, the biggest game, which is Forest Chelsea.
It's dropped, hasn't it?
Forest Chelsea determines everything. Because I think we will see what kind of Manchester United shows up. Obviously, they're still dealing with the hangover of losing the Europa League final against Tottenham. Mm-hmm. So, we have to see what comes next. There's a lot of turmoil there. But historically speaking, we don't do that great at Old Trafford. But these are different days, so we have to try and figure out. In fact, Unai Emery's first ever win as a manager for Villa was against Manchester United. So there are things that we can do. So we got to take care of business. I think that we will, and we'll win that game. Then everything, the focus is the big one. Come massive. And Forest winning against West Ham was really big, because now it has that impetus of Nuno Espirito Santo giving them that ray of hope of getting Champions League football. Nottingham Forest are the best story of the season in the Premier League, because regardless if they don't get Champions League football or not, they still have European football for the first time in more than 30 years, I think. So that's the big game. And I don't I don't see Forest losing, Justin. I see them maybe drawing. That's where I see it. But I don't see them losing. And so if Forest draw against Chelsea has 67, Forest will have 66, and we win, then we're good.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then we get Champions League football. So aside from our game, Forest, Chelsea's the one to watch.
Yes, I would concur wholeheartedly with your assessment of that. I don't see Forest losing that game. I think it'll be incredibly tight. Chelsea obviously know they've got to win it. They're going into it the same as us. Knowing a win is good enough to cement that place. I don't see Newcastle doing anything other than winning. Although Everton's form recently has been very good, I still, if it had been the other way around, back at Goodison maybe last game at there, but that could have been an interesting one. And the one I do think could be a bit of a real strange one is that Fulham City game. I've got a sneaky feeling that Fulham might do something there. So I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating end of the season. And the fact we've got down to the last day and there's 6 points between second and seventh is just insane, to be honest. And it just shows the strength of the Premier League and where we've gone this season. It's been an incredibly interesting season. So overall, how have you enjoyed this season? How have you felt it's all played out with? And I think one of my favourite quotes from our friend Damien Vidagani on Wednesday night was, I don't know if you've seen my video, he said and he said it quite loudly, there is no more big six in this country.
Yeah, and I've said that for a while now. And I'm so glad he said it out loud. This notion of big six is really focused towards the fact that there's a historical connotation with it. But that's not the truth now. It doesn't exist. In fact, I'll go now as far as to say that United now have a completely different narrative. Because they didn't win that Europa League final. So now this is a team that's just trying to be in the top 10 now. We're not talking about a club that's and so the big six thing is gone. And it's because of the competitive nature of the entire top half of that table. There's more money now with different clubs, more investment. When you look at the likes of Bournemouth, who also has American ownership, who has a really good manager. When you look at somebody like Brighton, who's constantly evolving and has a really talented manager. Brentford, what they do. This is not longer this simple as to say big six. That just doesn't exist. And Villa are a massive reason for that. They have completely shook I don't know how Forest will do next season and if this was an anomaly, but the fact that they've been fighting like this speaks for a lot. I think that are we a title-winning club now? Now that is now the bigger objective. I think the present objective is to remain a top 4, top 5 team, to get Champions League football every season. But it's difficult because there's so many clubs now, right? But the overall objective, I mean, is to really try and see, can we fight for a title? We're not there yet. I don't think we'll see what happens in the next few seasons, but I think that maybe, depending on how, because here's the answer to this as well, Justin, and allow me to just divert a little bit. But
absolutely,
the conclusion of Sunday also determines a lot of what happens this summer from a business perspective. And so I want to see what kind of squad is assembled for next summer, because now Unai Emery is entering the next chapter of his managerial tenure with Villa. The first one, he was remarkable in helping us get European football when he only arrived in November. The second one, we got Champions League football. If we get Champions League football again, then now we determine, okay, so now what can we do? So now this is a Premier League that it's incredibly competitive, and you have to be smart off the pitch as you are on it. Look at Liverpool. Nobody gave Liverpool an absolute inch to win the title at the beginning of the season because it was a new manager. But they got the right man, they got the right direction, Richard Hughes, a new sporting director, and boom, they won it because they were so focused, right? So I think Man City are going to come back angrier next season as well. So there's a lot of components. So overall, I think it was a really, really good season. Like I said, A-, but Sunday dictates a lot of what happens in the summer transfer window, because I do see a lot of exits need to happen before a lot of incomings come, and of course contract negotiations.
Yes, it is going to be another monumental summer, and I think everybody's sort of leaning towards that we are going to do a similar amount of business that we did last year with some of our bigger name players going. I don't know how many, I don't know what kind of impact either finishing in that Champions League positions or out of it would have on how many people we do have to let go. And I just hope that this is the last summer now where we have to come out and sort of Damien and Monchi and Unai have to come out and say, look, we're still going to have a difficult summer ahead, because it still blows my mind that we've had the season we've had off the back of 2 unbelievable finishes, 2 European campaigns, the record sponsorship deals all over the pitch, the Adidas deal, the sat out every single home game, Champions League revenue, and we're still at a position where we have to start talking about letting some of our better players go to comply. It doesn't make sense in my football brain. It just doesn't. I understand it. It has to be done, and it will be done, and we will be compliant. But I just hope this is the last summer now, and hopefully Champions League qualification again would lead us next year to not be in the same position. Would you probably agree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think PSR overall, in terms of an actual strategy, is a good thing. You're trying to regulate, the fundamental aspects of how a club brings in money and how much they should be allowed to spend, because there is obviously, because the biggest example of that is that the newly promoted clubs, there has never been a bigger gap of everybody else and the newly promoted. Like you can almost always guarantee now that the clubs that come up will go back down. So PSR is very important. But to your point, I think there also needs to be an argument to be like, don't punish success, because that can be an issue too. When you qualify for the Champions League, when you win a trophy and all those things, now comes the amounted pressure of trying to finance a situation that happened 3 seasons ago. And so I think that it just needs to be looked at a little bit better. And how, obviously Chelsea's amortization strategy can hurt them, as needs to be overlooked as well. So the overall sentiment here is that like a club shouldn't be punished for being successful and for being ambitious, and that's pretty much Nassif Sawiris' main point, really. So I agree with you. I hope this is the last one, but we're gonna have to wait and see, I guess. And unfortunately, the fan suffers as a result as well, because ticket prices go up, as we saw obviously in the beginning stages of the ticket prices for, the league phase, Champions League tickets and so forth. So there's a lot that has to be done in order to make sure that a club is not punished for being ambitious and at the same time is following the rules. But I'm telling you something, this is a summer where we're going to be, unfortunately, saying goodbye to a few players who we hold dear to our hearts, and we just have to be ready for it. I hope I'm wrong, because Justin, I'll tell you something. A lot depends on Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I fear.
Champions League football depends on Sunday. Dibu Martinez is. I'll just say this. Nothing.
What are your thoughts on that? With that, because everybody's obviously overhyped by the reaction he gave coming off the pitch at Villa Park. He's upset, his tears. That obviously lends itself really to say, I'm saying goodbye and I'm very disappointed. Yeah, this is my last time.
Yeah.
How would you read it, being in the position you're in?
Well, I wrote a big thread about the situation for this summer on Threads. That kind of that's basically saying what I've just been saying. That I think a lot of it, Sunday dictates a lot, not just ins and outs, but also contract negotiations. For example, Yuri Timmermans, Bouba Kamara, like they're going to happen. Like I think John Percy from the Telegraph already reported on it. Like, and I concur. Like, contracts are being negotiated with players that are very, very important. Morgan Rogers is untouchable. There's already parameters that have been set to make sure that certain key players are set. Dibu Martinez, and I said it in my threads, he will go down as one of my top 5 favorite players in the history of the club. Not just like recently, but in the history. The connection that I have with that man is so deep. Being South American, living in England for a long time, a World Cup champion, the personality that he has given, like all these things. He is he will go down as a legend of the club. And in my opinion, in the top 5. That's how big he has been and is for the club. I think that the Champions League Sunday dictates a lot, because next season precedes the World Cup. Mm-hmm. And Dibu Martinez feels that he needs to be at the very best in order to be ready for that as well. And 31 years old, it's not old for a goalkeeper, but it's old in terms of what he's thinking about his family. He's very happy in Birmingham, but there are offers. But I do envisage a situation where, he could leave this summer. Sunday dictates a lot. He has offers from Saudi Arabia reportedly and Europe reportedly, and I think that we have to be ready for the fact that he could leave this summer. That to me is obviously from an emotional perspective horrible, but it's just the fact. And where did we begin here, Justin? This is a business as well. And as much as we want to see a player be in the club forever, we have to live to the expectation that it might not happen. I cried my eyes out when Dwight York went to Manchester United, my hero. I never got over it. But there was a reason why he did it. I was very upset and nostalgic, obviously, when Jack Grealish left. Obviously, we made some good money out of it. Dibu Martinez will also not leave for cheap. So it's also about that situation, so there's a lot of components, but Sunday dictates so much. The likes of Leon Bailey, who I like very much, but has been inconsistent. I think offers will be listened for him. I don't know what the fate will be of Jacob Ramsey too. He's a homegrown player. I love him, but I think offers will be listened to, and reportedly Tottenham are interested. So we have to be ready for these conversations. Yeah. But again, this is how I ended the threads, Justin. As much as we love players and we hate to see them go, the most important person in this entire thing is Unai Emery. And as long as he's here, I trust that more than anything. Anything. Above anything, I trust that. Okay? And that to me is the biggest thing. If Unai Emery is here, then I can handle everything else, because he's the most important player. But we have to come to the realization that there's going to be a lot of activity this summer. But Sunday dictates pretty much everything else.
I absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. And you know me, I'm a positive Villa fan. And I think we'll get 5th. I do.
Me too. I think we'll get 5th as well.
I still think it will make it a rocky summer. I still think there'll be big decisions to be made. But I wholeheartedly, and it's a fantastic place to end this conversation, that we all agree that as long as Unai Emery remains in control of this ship, we will be sailing in the right direction for a very long time to come.
Amen.
So, prediction for the Sunday then?
I think it's going to be tricky at the beginning. No, rephrase that. I think we're going to go out guns blazing. I think United are going to have a hangover from the Europa League final, but they want their fans to have something. So it's not like they're just going to give us a win. They're going to fight. But I think we win this, and I think we win this 2-0. I don't even think they score. I think we win 2-0, and Forest score first. Forest score first, and Chelsea equalize, and that's how it stays.
I'm not even going to predict. I'll take both of them results all day long. Absolutely brilliant. So finally, thank you so much, Lewis. Honestly, I cannot thank you enough for not only coming on today, but your friendship over the years. You know, we've met quite a few times, and every time I meet yourself and your beautiful wife, it's a joy, honestly, and your companionship and your messages and everything, your help as well at times, you know, when I've struggled at bits and bobs. It's just brilliant, and you're a good friend. And I look forward to your next message asking for the next top.
No, I appreciate everything, and I'll be messaging you right now for that next Villa Wisher, as well as making sure my publisher sends you my book. But like, I feel the same way, Justin. I'm so glad we met and we became friends. I'll never forget you. Also, you gave us a lift to the station as well. Remember when we were like coming outside of Villa Park? So I share everything. Keep going with this. I love it. I think it's really important to have like really cool conversations, and I love the way how you begin about getting to know a person first before we start talking about football, because that's really important, I think, in this day and age. Like, let's get to know each other and understand each other before anything else.
Yeah, I think it's an important way. And, you know, I like to be friends with and just be nice with people. And you know, there's a picture.
There you go.
Your last visit over here. I thought I'd drop that in right at the end.
I love it.
It's been wonderful chat as always. Drop me a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all again next time. It just remains for me to say thank you very much to Lewis for joining me live from New York City.
Up the Villa!
Up the Villa!